A woman named Dove, a reporter for the colonial newspaper, has been pursuing a story for 18 months. Until a key witness commits suicide, the case suddenly ends. She does not report to the police but takes the witness's computer. Her superiors are afraid that she will cause more trouble, so they force her to go to Bodkin Island to investigate a disappearance 25 years ago. Bodkin is Dove's hometown, where she committed an unforgivable crime. But her superiors make it clear that if Dove does not go, she will be fired. Dove has no choice but to give in. Accompanying Dove is Gilbert, the host of a true crime podcast. Emmy, the assistant investigator, a tour guide, and a geneticist, tells them about the island's traditional festival. Samhain is organized by a rich man named Finton. His farm is not far ahead. There have been no more festivals on the island since the disappearances. It is said that he has recently been thinking about reviving Samhain. The three of them rent a room at an inn on the island. In the room, Dove sees a wolf. In a flash, it jumps through the window. Mrs. O'Shea introduces the three of them to local customs, but when she hears about the disappearances, her face shows an unusual tension. The place where Samhain is held is a grassy field. Since the incident, the land has been abandoned. The owner of the land, Dara, tells them that the islanders are eager to restart Samhain. It seems that they are all very unhappy that the event was cancelled because of the disappearances. One of the missing people is Fiona. She was a teacher when she was alive. Her cousin still lives on the island. The second missing person is named Malachi. There is no information at all. The strangest thing was that the third missing person could not even find out his name, making it seem as if he had never existed. Gilbert's ancestors had lived here, so he quickly integrated into the islanders. Gilbert knew a man named Seamus. Dove was not carried away by the lively atmosphere of the bar. Dove saw Sean give Seamus some money. While she was still wondering, a man suddenly stood up and hummed a Samhain song. Dove could not stand the mysteriousness of the islanders, so she stood up and went outside to get some air. An old man suddenly told her that the three missing people had actually been attacked, but many other people did not dare to speak. Early the next morning, the three woke up from their drunken stupor. Gilbert had forgotten most of what had happened last night. He only found an $8,000 bill in his pocket. At the same time, Sean disappeared and could not be contacted. According to the schedule, they were to interview the police who had participated in the investigation and Fiona's cousin that day, but Dove refused to go with them. Instead, she asked the locals. A woman close to Sean had a vague look in her eyes. Sometimes she asked what the three of them had found out. Sometimes she told them about the origin of the island, but she absolutely refused to answer Dove's questions. Dove had to leave. After Dove left, the woman breathed a sigh of relief. Gilbert and Emmy had no better luck. Fiona's cousin refused to open the door. Finally, they found a policeman named Bon who had investigated the case. He enthusiastically invited them into his house. He told them that it was a tradition here to dress up to avoid being found by the souls of those who died without a kiss. But when Emmy asked about the three missing people, Bon's expression immediately changed. He said the islanders were peaceful and kind. Sean was a good person, so there was absolutely no way anything strange could have happened. Perhaps it was just a joke that the other three people deliberately disappeared to cause confusion. Gilbert and Emmy wanted to continue asking, but Bon pulled them to drink. The three of them drank until they were drunk. The two of them struggled to help Bon onto the bed. They were worried that he would vomit and suffocate, so they carefully adjusted his position. But after they left, Bon suddenly sat up and stared at the wine and the island map on the other side of the bed. Dove quickly went to Sean's house and found the window unlocked. As soon as Dove entered, Seamus came in angrily. Sean's phone was still unreachable. Dove hid to the side and listened to him curse. After Seamus left, Dove secretly followed him. She saw him buy a bouquet of flowers from the shop and throw it off cliff, as if he was going to celebrate for someone. Dove wanted to continue following, but Seamus soon recognized her. Seamus's words were no different from Bon's. He said that the islanders were simple. Everyone was kind. The old story of Samhain only broke the current harmony. Dove did not listen to Seamus, but she found him very familiar. On the way back, Dove suddenly saw a black car. Dove knew it was a bad guy, so she quickly turned into the woods to escape. But the car still turned around and blocked her, then crashed straight into her. Two masked men got out of the car and warned that if she continued to investigate the disappearance, she would have a tragic end. At the same time, a fire truck passed by. Gilbert and Emmy headed towards the hotel where they were staying. When they arrived, they discovered that Sean's car was on fire. Could this also be a warning? On the way back, Dove met the wolf again. It appeared many times but had no intention of harming her. When Dove staggered back to the hotel, the fire had been put out. Dove heard Sean talking to Mrs. O'Shea. It turned out that they were mother and son. But why did they deliberately hide it? This unusual action further showed that both of them were hiding a secret. And Dove's threat also proved that the detective team was getting closer to the truth. Because the islanders refused to provide information about Fiona and Malachi, Emmy had to steal Bones' investigation file. In it was an article about the third missing person. person. He strangely returned to the island on the third day after his disappearance. Under the light, the three people clearly saw the name that had been corrected with a marker. It turned out that Edward was discovered by a nun named McDonough that year on the side of the road. Sister McDonough lived on another island close to the shore. It was said that these three poor detectives were only doing podcasts, so she invited them to visit the monastery. This monastery had a history dating back to the 12th century. It was originally a medieval castle. About 100 years ago, it was taken over by a group of nuns. In the 1980s, they decided to open it to the public. Many devotees pay to come here to practice outdoor yoga or to participate in private therapy provided by the nuns. Dove quickly realizes that convent is just there to make money, but the nun asks Dove if hers stands for DiBiase, because there's a story here that many years ago, a girl named DiBiase set fire to a convent. So Dove was the girl in the story after all. But when the nun wasn't paying attention, Dove pulled her two friends up to the third floor to find McDonough. McDonough seemed unwell, but Dove still pushed McDonough bluntly. Dove forced McDonough to answer. He couldn't stand Dove's rudeness. He gently comforted McDonough to help her remember Sam's disappearance. McDonough said that a few days later, when she was driving out, she accidentally met the missing boy on the side of the road. But he had lost his memory, only remembering his name was Edward. He also had another name, Teddy. It was the young man in the bar that day who suddenly started singing. Teddy was Bond's son. No wonder Bond hid his son's name in the investigation file. The two of them ran a blacksmith shop together. Since the incident that year, Teddy didn't like to communicate. He locked himself in the blacksmith shop all day. On the outside, he looked cold and distant, but when he saw Dove's injured hand, he gently bandaged her. He realized that the group had no malicious intentions. He revealed that Fiona was his teacher. Teddy had no friends, so Fiona drove him home after school. She cooked for him. She told him stories so he wouldn't feel lonely. At that moment, Bond rushed in and chased the three out of the blacksmith shop. The police said that if they came to find Teddy again, they would arrest them under the pretext of harassment. 25 years later, Bond still treated Teddy like a child and protected him. Bond never asked Teddy if he wanted to become an adult. As soon as the three of them arrived in Seattle, Jean, who was supposed to be waiting there, disappeared again. At the same time, Dove received a call from her superiors. Because she was carrying a witness's computer, the police used her as an excuse to invoke the State Secrets Act to officially request her arrest. She had no choice but to stay on the island to investigate and wait for her superiors to find a way to solve her problem. On the way back, the investigation team met Dara. He reminded Buzz that the Azakon on the island, Frank, had been looking for him everywhere. But in Buzz's impression, he seemed to have not forgotten this character. Dara, the land manager on the island, also knew something about the disappearance 25 years ago. Before the case happened, Teddy was a lively boy, often sticking to Fiona. But when Dove asked if the missing person Malachi had any connection with Fiona, Dara suddenly changed his expression. He only said that if they mentioned unrelated things again, he would smash their teeth with a rock. On the island, there was an activity called street bowling on public roads. More than half of the islanders participated. Dove asked the gentle-looking old couple for clues about Malachi. They only knew that Malachi was very good at street bowling. From 1995 until his disappearance in 1999, Malachi won 4 consecutive championships. It just so happened that every tournament had a photo taken. After more than 20 years, only the library still had the camera and photos. The library was 30 kilometers away from Dove. Dove and Emmy took a tricycle. Bud and Siamis went to the bar and enjoyed themselves so much that they forgot that they were there to revive their podcast. A girl with green hair soon came to them. She pointed out that Bud had lost 8,000 euros in a bet when he was drunk at the bar. That was why Dara told Bud to be careful with Frank. Bud only had $367 left in his account. His credit card was over $5,400. Bud had no idea where he would get the money to pay Frank. Emmy and Dove didn't arrive until late at night, but the library had long since closed. They wanted to find clues about Malachi, so Emmy climbed through the window. They avoided the manager's return to check, and Dove opened the door for them. Thanks to the dim light, Emmy found news from 1990. Besides Malachi, there was also a key character, Siamis. The relationship between Siamis and Malachi seemed extremely intimate. More importantly, Dove remembered that she had done a separate report about Siamis. Siamis's real name was Jack. Jack was wanted by the police for smuggling for several years. That year, everyone thought Jack was dead. Unexpectedly, he had been anonymous on this island for more than 20 years. So were the 3 missing people related to him? At that moment, Mrs. O'Shea informed the 3 people that a murder had just occurred on the island. Someone had discovered Dara's body. At this moment, the 3 people suddenly thought of a problem. What if the perpetrator, who had been hanging for 25 years, still had no intention of stopping? The islanders stitched up Dara's wounds and cleaned his body. They gave him a proper funeral. Mary, Dara's Dara's first love, told Dove that there was a mark on his head. It seemed like Dara had tripped over something. There was no trace of a third person at the scene. Therefore, the islanders refused to let the coroner examine him. When asked about their impressions of Dara, everyone said he was a devout believer. Dara absolutely could not have gotten into conflict with anyone. The conflict was that right after Dara died, the islanders had already started preparing for the Samhain festival. The official organizers were in charge of the division of labor. Siamis was upset because of Dara. A fight almost broke out on the spot. Dove wanted to get information from Siamis, but he was only interested in telling his own story. Years ago, Siamis worked for the British government. Siamis originally intended to report a series of incidents caused by the health system's data leak, but his identity was exposed by a reporter. From then on, his life was turned upside down. He could only live in inglorious ways. In the end, he became a rat that ran across the street and was beaten by everyone. Gilbert accidentally met the green-haired girl again at funeral. Through conversation, Gilbert learned that she did not know Malachi. On the night of the disappearance, she took her friend to another town. She missed the Samhain festival party, so she did not know what happened at the scene. The detective team decided to split up to investigate. Gilbert heard Dara's two sisters say that he had been imprisoned for a land dispute. It was also in prison that he met Malachi. After being released from prison, the two became very close friends. The sisters all felt that Dara had a special affection for Malachi. He also rented a very good piece of land to Malachi at a cheap price for several years. That year, during the Samhain festival, Malachi went missing. Derek's older brother took over the cheap lease. That older brother was Siamis. At the party, Emmy met Finton. He told him about a famous local mythical figure named Jackie Lanton. Legend has it that he committed a despicable crime and was punished by fate. He was destined to wander forever. When Finton was young, he and his best friend had a bet to see who would dare go to the swamp near the Samhain festival. It was said that Jackie Lanton appeared there. Finton was only 14 at the time. To show off in front of a girl, he deliberately ate hallucinogenic mushrooms before leaving. As soon as he got near the swamp, he saw a figure nearby. He also heard a shrill scream and a terrible crash from the side of the road. But when he sobered up the next day and returned to the scene, he saw no trace of a car accident. So Finton just thought it was a hallucination caused by mushrooms. At this time, Dove went to Siamis's house. Siamis was very careful. Every door in the house was locked. But Siamis did not expect that in order to find his weakness, Dove was willing to crawl through the dog hole. Siamis lived alone, so the house, apart from the basic amenities, seemed to have nothing special. In a bag, there was a photo of Siamis and Fiona together, along with a ring engraved with Fiona's name. Dove and Gilbert put together all the clues. Malachi and Siamis were brothers. It was speculated that the two of them considered this place as a perfect haven for smugglers. Later, Malachi took away Siamis's lover, Fiona. Siamis killed both of them out of hatred. At this time, Emmy at Finton's house found some tools that belonged to Teddy. Only then did Emmy learn that they were best friends 25 years ago. On the occasion of Samhain, Finton was supposed to meet Teddy, but because of that girl, Finton did not come as promised. 3 days later, Teddy went missing and was told by the nun to return to the island, but he was no longer active but became quiet and quiet. Finton always wondered if he had kept his word that night and gone to find Teddy, would things have been different? Gilbert and Dove got drunk. When they went out, they met Frank asking for a debt. Dove patted Frank on the head and the two took the opportunity to run away. After that, they gradually sobered up. Gilbert couldn't help but say that when he founded the company, he had put all his heart and soul into it. At that time, there were indeed many people who liked his show and called him a hit-making machine, but in reality, Gilbert even mortgaged his house to keep the company running. Life has ups and downs, but once you fall off cliff, you can't go up anymore. The glory that was breathed before is just a hibiscus that blooms in the morning and fades in the evening. Now he is even worse than a normal working person, so he put all his mind into making the podcast well. Otherwise, what awaited him next was divorce from his wife and the breakdown of his family. After a night of depression, the two of them picked themselves up and decided to move forward. Today was the day of Dare's funeral. A woman told the army that 25 years ago on Samhain night, there was a car accident on a stretch of road. Could this be related to the crash Finran had mentioned? Gilbert boarded Siamis's fishing boat and asked about Malachi and Fiona. Siamis, after a month of silence, finally spoke. Fiona was the lover Siamis had devoted everything to protecting. Malachi was Siamis's spiritual support. But one day, the two of them suddenly disappeared. Rumors suddenly spread on the island that Malachi and Fiona had run away together. Siamis became a laughingstock in everyone's eyes. Siamis didn't know who to ask or where to go. Searching for the truth was also the time when Siamis was forced to accept the fact that not every problem had an answer. The detective team arrived at the swamp that Finton had mentioned. It was very quiet all around. Not even the sound of birds chirping. The lake water was very shallow, but looking down, it was a terrifying black patch. Dove took off her coat and groped soaked in the lake for a long time. Suddenly her expression changed. She told the two to call the police. They pulled up a junk car. The seats were empty. There was no body, as imagined. Dove had just stepped hard on the car when the skeleton suddenly opened. Inside were two skeletons still hugging each other. The police quickly arrived to block off the scene and chase away all unrelated people. At the crucial moment, Sean disappeared again. Emmy's phone was still in Sean's car. According to the location, they investigated that Sean was at a factory on the island. They ran over and saw Seamus talking business with some people from the island. Seamus then told Sean a few words and they left together. The detectives entered the factory. They saw only tanks of all sizes. There seemed to be some unknown creature wriggling inside. Dove was examining it when she accidentally slipped and fell. When she got up, she was covered in moving things. Two seemingly gentle men told them that they were baby eels. Dove immediately recognized them as the two masked men who had threatened her that day. They were Interpol. They had found out that the island was a hub for fish smuggling. They were worried that Dove's group would sabotage the raid, so they had to come out and warn them. They asked Dove's group to stay away from Seamus and the island. Eels are hunted in global urban culture. They are more valuable than gold. Eel smuggling is the world's largest animal trafficking crime. Many international gangs compete for a share. The detectives had just discovered Seamus's connection to the murder when the smuggling case came up, so they immediately suspended it. The murder investigation had to be put on hold. Then Frank went to beat Gilbert up again. Frank threatened him with 24 hours to pay back the €8,000 debt. The two women secretly hid Gilbert to restart the investigation. In the souvenir photos from the 1990 bowling tournament, they saw an overlooked figure, Paul. Could he have some connection to Malachi? Paul agreed to tell the story in exchange for Dove, promising not to mention Teddy in the podcast. It was then that they learned that the island was full of hidden tunnels and caverns. That's why smugglers from generation to generation had flocked here. Among them was a ruthless gang called the Marco brothers. Paul saw them with his own eyes on Samhain night. Then Malachi and Fiona disappeared. It wasn't hard to connect the two, but if the gang killed them, why did Seamus immediately take over Malachi's lease and start a smuggling ring? How could it be a coincidence? Could Paul be covering for Seamus? The two returned to the swamp. Emmy distracted the police. Dove stole a small knife from the abandoned car. Teddy's name was engraved on it. Everything clicked immediately. Teddy was definitely involved, and Paul, by protecting Seamus, was probably protecting Teddy. Teddy's silence was because of the Samhain disappearance that year. If Finton talked to Teddy, he might find out what Dara Teddy was that night. Finton had always felt guilty about abandoning Teddy back then. This could both untie Teddy's knot and solve the two murders, so he had no reason to refuse. At this moment, Seamus saw through Gilbert's poverty. Seamus offered to help Gilbert pay off his debt on the condition that Gilbert not mention his name in the podcast. Before Seamus gave Gilbert the money, he went to the lake to meet some strangers to discuss business. Gilbert recognized the two people as Interpol. They pretended to be eel buyers at €1,500 per kilo. They became Seamus's new customers. Then Seamus led Gilbert into the forest. This was where the Samhain festival was held. Seamus entered a cave. The cave entrance was covered with branches. It was difficult to detect with the naked eye. Seamus brought a wad of money from the cave. Gilbert paid Frank's debt, but Frank greedily demanded an additional €5,000 in interest. Seamus got angry and used a stapler to stab Frank. Gilbert witnessed the horror of smugglers for the first time. After Seamus calmed down, he apologized to Gilbert. Seamus explained that he had been holding back his emotions ever since he learned that Malachi and Fiona's bodies were in the car in the swamp. Gilbert decided to take Seamus to the morgue to see the old man's face to thank him. According to Emmy and Dove's arrangement, Finton and Teddy met. They used to be best friends. Actually, Finton not showing up for their date 25 years ago was not worth mentioning. What Teddy noticed most was that Finton only came to see him now. When they talked it out, the grudge was gone. Teddy also said that the small knife Dove found was a gift he gave to his father Bone when he was 11. Bone had always considered the knife a talisman, so he kept it in the car. In other words, the car in the lake actually belonged to Bone. Seamus and Cindy were involved in the eel trade. They even had a lot of weapons, but he had not participated in any murders, at least not yet. They met again at midnight and exchanged what they had found. Gilbert wanted to take Seamus to the morgue. The morgue was in Mary's apartment. Dove had forgotten about Mary, so she easily entered the apartment. While Mary was in the kitchen, Dove secretly opened the door for Gilbert and Seamus. Dove on the first floor kept Mary to talk. Just then, Dove's superior called to report bad news. The police wanted to take Dove in for trial. At the same time, Seamus pulled the white cloth. As soon as Seamus looked, he recognized that it was the body of his brother, Malachi, who had been living with him. Malachi's body was convulsing. It was hard to imagine how much torture Malachi had endured before she died. On this island, the only people who could be so cruel were the notorious McCall brothers. Seamus turned to hug the remaining body and cried. cried. Seamus could hate, could go crazy, but in his heart, at least they were still alive. It was better than being separated by the yin and yang. Soon, Seamus discovered something was wrong. Fiona had 2 fake teeth when she was alive, but this woman's teeth were completely intact. Who was this person? Seamus didn't know, but it definitely wasn't Fiona. More than 20 years ago, there were 2 major smuggling rings on the island. One was Siamis's, the other was the Macaw gang. One day the Macaw gang got their hands on a bunch of explosives. Seamus reported it to the police. All the Macaw players were arrested. Seamus took the explosives and made enemies with them. Not long after, the criminals were released. The first thing the Macaw gang did was definitely find Seamus to get revenge. Plus, Malachi and Fiona went missing. Seamus was sure he couldn't escape the Macaw gang. There was a woman named Rona who married the leader of the Macaw gang. Rona wasn't afraid at all. She was even more excited. However, Rona didn't know Fiona and Malachi at all. Rona couldn't even tell if Fiona was dead. Seamus had the wrong person. After Seamus left, Rona made a phone call. If it wasn't the Macaws who killed Malachi, then who could it be? Where was Fiona really? Was she still alive? Countless questions swirled in his mind. Suddenly, someone fell from a tree in front of him. It was Dove. She was taking her coat from a branch, not knowing why it was there. Dove told Gilbert that the butterfly car belonged to Bon. Seamus heard it too. He rushed straight to the hospital and pointed his gun at Bon. Only then did Seamus learn that the Macaws had tracked down Malachi on Samhain night. Bon had wanted to take him and Fiona off the island, but Fiona had mysteriously disappeared. When he returned home, neither Malachi nor Bon's car was to be found. Bon had always thought it was the Macaws, so for more than 20 years he kept silent to protect his family. Seamus was angry that they were also hiding the truth, so he got angry with Gilbert. To show his sincerity, Gilbert frankly told Seamus that the 2 people who went to the riverbank to make a deal were actually Interpol. Seamus was about to get into trouble. Just then, Emmy texted to say that she knew who the woman was. The night before, Dove received news that the police had asked for a warrant to bring her in for investigation. Dove and Mary went to the bar to drink. They coincidentally met Bon. While drunk, Dove asked Bon what was the connection between the car and the swamp, 2 bodies, and Teddy's knife. Bon panicked and had a heart attack. Teddy saw the scene of Dove threatening Bon. After Dove woke up drunk at Mary's house, she didn't see anything wrong with what she did last night. Dove even blamed Mary for not teaching her children properly. Her daughter dared to shoot seagulls with 7 guns. Dove's arrogant and aggressive attitude angered Mary. Dove finally left. Dove walked down the path. When she looked up, she saw her coat hanging on the tree. She took it down and met Gilbert and Siamis. Teddy was agitated by last night's events. He remembered many things he had forgotten. More than 20 years ago, on the night of Samhain, he remembered seeing a lot of snow in the house. He accidentally got a brick on his hand. Then Malachi and Fiona disappeared. Teddy couldn't remember anything else. At this point, Bon had nothing left to hide. The real situation that night was that while he was out looking for Fiona, Malachi and Teddy got into a fight over Fiona. Teddy lost control of his actions. When Bon returned, the house was covered in snow. Malachi collapsed on the ground. While Bon was dealing with the body, he stabbed another girl, so he had to deal with both bodies. At this time, Dove also received a message from Emmy. She knew the woman's identity. This had to start from the night before. Emmy was already very upset with Dove's arrogance. Emmy saw Dove corner Bon to the point of having a heart attack right at the bar. During the struggle, Emmy took Dove's coat. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. She hung the coat on a tree outside and yelled to relieve her anger. Early the next morning, she woke up in Finton's villa. Finton had let many people go home. Finton was preparing for the new Samhain festival. Emmy went to the morgue. On the woman's arm, she found a bracelet engraved with the name Grinta, a professional podcaster. She recorded every time she talked to the islanders. In the recording, when she asked the girl Grinta, she just mentioned the name Grinta. She said that on the night of Samhain, she did not attend the party but took Grinta to another town. If Bon hadn't accidentally stabbed Grinta that night, how could Grinta have taken him somewhere else? Why would she lie? The 3 searched Grinta's car. Inside were photos of the Samhain festival night. She had obviously attended the festival. What was even stranger was that Grinta also had an ultrasound photo of Fiona's fetus. At the same time, Seamus was on the 2nd floor of the fishing boat and told Sean to cancel all transactions with the new group of guests. But he discovered that the small door to leave the boat was locked. The boat was also set on fire by bad guys. By morning, the boat had burned to a crisp. Interpol was expected to come to investigate. At the same time, they also received an extradition order from the local police requesting them to cooperate with the island police to arrest Dove. Next, she would face a sentence of up to 2 years. To find out the truth, every hour had to be taken. In Mrs. O'Shea's storage room, Dove found a stack of files. The file ties were the sash of a nun's habit. Each nun had her own knot. This knot came from the Sisters of Northern Ireland, the same order that Sister McDonough belonged to. Dove and Emmy returned to the convent on the island. The old nun said McDonough was resting. She invited them into the office to wait and made made them tea. She refused to answer any questions. Instead, she dug up Dove's past. Many years ago, Dove had set fire to the church. They realized the old nun was trying to stall for time and prevent them from seeing McDonough. When she left, Dove tried to sneak upstairs, but Dove found the office door locked. She picked the lock with a small knife on the table and went upstairs to find McDonough. McDonough looked much better. McDonough remembered Fiona taking good care of her, so they arranged for Fiona to join. Fiona was still in the old convent. While McDonough was talking, Dove saw a wolf crawl out of McDonough's leg. McDonough suddenly sat up and said she lived in the dark, but Emmy found it strange. In Emmy's eyes, McDonough was still lying on the bed, not even opening her eyes. Dove's head was dizzy. It seemed like she saw herself as a child. Her mother held her hand and walked down the convent steps. Dove followed and saw her childhood version being dragged away by the nuns. They cruelly pushed Dove's head into the water. On the floor were her stripped clothes. There was also a stuffed wolf. Only when Emmy woke Dove up did she realize that the tea in the office had a problem. The old nun must have added hallucinogens. In a moment, Dove was dizzy again and chased after her childhood self to the cellar. The nun inside told Dove that her mother's health was about to improve. She would take Dove home immediately. Thinking of her mother, who had been away for so many years, Dove's sadness welled up. She collapsed to the ground and burst into tears. But Emmy became more suspicious. Dove's mother had clearly died a long time ago. Emmy suddenly realized that the nuns here always gave people hallucinogens. There were no good resources on this remote island, but the influx was increasing. That was the clearest evidence. Emmy called Gilbert and told him not to drink the monastery's tea. The two found an apiary on the backside of the mountain. As soon as Dove entered, she saw herself as a child lighting a beehive with a lighter. Her mother stood calmly in front. Dove took off her mask and saw that it was herself again. She panicked and fell to the ground. Before Dove passed out, the last thing she saw was the stuffed wolf. On the other side, Gilbert on the island met the girl and Teddy. He learned from them that on the night of the Samhain festival, Fiona wanted the girl to go with her to another town, but the girl was busy with smuggling, so she refused. After Teddy killed Malachi, he planned to chase Bon, who was handling the body. Bon accidentally bumped into the girls near the dock. Bon was worried that the smuggling would be exposed, so he knocked Teddy out and placed him near a small monastery with a tombstone. No name, no date, only the word Moha was different, meaning gifted to mother by the people. The old nun told them that the person buried here was Fiona. That year she was pregnant and ran to the monastery. The due date was moved up to May 30th. Fiona did not survive. The baby died with her. At the crucial moment, Dove fainted. When she woke up, she told her own story. Her mother was a hermit. After leaving Dove at the monastery, her mother never visited her again. From that day on, her mother became her demon. The old nun also confessed that she buried Fiona on the island, but this was against the rules of the nunnery. She was forced to use hallucinogens on the followers to ask them to keep it a secret. But Emmy compared Fiona's ultrasound photo and found that the due date the nun had given did not match the estimated date on the ultrasound. She lied again. At that moment, the main door opened. The nun led the police to arrest Dove. Emmy discovered a clue from the photos hanging in the hallway. Mrs. O'Shea left the convent the same year Fiona died. Every nun had a souvenir photo when she left, but Mrs. O'Shea had none. Emmy had heard Sean say that he was Mrs. O'Shea's adopted son. More than half a year of his waiting for life coincided with the year Fiona died. So O'Shea did not leave the convent, but adopted a child from the convent and went to another island. That child was Seamus and Fiona's son. It was Sean. Fiona was the only one who died that year. The police escorted the three of them back to the island. The shore was brightly lit. The festival project was about to restart. No one expected Seamus to be dead. He escaped from the burning boat. The macaws had found out about Seamus's whereabouts. They had assembled their most ruthless assassins to come. Seamus was in a hurry to run away. He planned to cancel the deal with the new customer and reconnect with the old one. Even if they forced price down to €500 per kilo, he would accept it. Seamus was embarrassed to show his face, so he handed over the whole business to Sean. But Sean mixed up all of Seamus's baby eels. Dove told Gilbert about her childhood. Ever since her mother left her in the convent, the nun had seen her without support and bullied her. No one had been kind to Dove. Dove suffered for years. She wanted to find her mother. The nun lied to Dove that her mother had come, but her mother was sick. When her mother was well, she would take her away. Dove struggled to live a lie. When she grew up, she investigated a news report. She promised the witness that she would keep her identity a secret, but Dove couldn't do it. When the witness died, Dove was the first to discover the body. She didn't report it to the police, but took the computer full of evidence. She didn't understand why she turned into the liar she hated the most. Interpol wanted to send Dove back to her country, but she had an idea. Interpol was looking for Seamus anyway, so Dove could help them. In return, they just had to turn a blind eye and pretend they didn't see her on the island. Seamus stormed into Mrs. O'Shea's house and said cruel words. Seamus swore he would find Sean. Seamus would make Sean's life worse worse than death. Mrs. O'Shea was scared. Then she honestly told the truth. Before Fiona died, she made O'Shea swear that she would never let Sean have anything to do with Seamus. When the three detectives set foot on the island, Mrs. O'Shea tried to scare them away. She even set Sean's car on fire. But the detectives were wrong, so she conspired with the girl who burned Seamus's boat. But Seamus didn't die. Now Seamus and Sean were enemies. To avoid trouble on top of trouble, Mrs. O'Shea had no choice but to find a way to force Sean to return the baby eels. But Sean was blinded by money. The baby eels in his hands were worth more than gold. He didn't care about the risk of smuggling, and he ignored Emmy's advice. He didn't believe that the new customer was Interpol. Seamus returned home because of his pet dog. Dove asked Seamus to cooperate, but she refused. Seamus couldn't keep him safe either. The macaws were at the door. Seamus could only hide in the secret room. Seamus saw with his own eyes the ruthless macaw assassin aiming a gun at the dog. Rona reminded him that Seamus had taken Gilbert to the gift shop. Finding Gilbert might lead to Seamus's whereabouts. Seamus had no mind to think about eels now. But if Seamus runs away, Gilbert will be in danger. The best way is to tell Seamus where the child is. That way Seamus will give up on running. They turn to Sean to ask, and then Interpol will arrest Seamus. So Sean won't fall into the hands of the macaw gang. The Interpol man is also safe. They texted Seamus when the phone rang. On the street, the Samhain procession was about to march thanks to the crowd. Seamus and Gilbert avoided the macaw gang to meet. Seamus learned that Sean was his son, and that tonight was the night of the deal with Interpol. Mrs. O'Shea and Emmy advised Sean to cancel the deal. Seamus also arrived in time. They revealed the truth that had been hidden for so long, but Sean refused to accept his identity. Seamus thought Mrs. O'Shea was instigating Sean to refuse to acknowledge him as his father. Seamus angrily pulled out a gun. During the struggle, Seamus pulled the trigger and broke Sean's finger. Interpol rushed in. Seamus quickly cornered Gilbert. He was a witness to everything. The tape recorder in his pocket recorded the entire event. To protect himself, Seamus took Gilbert to a mountain cave near the Samhain festival. There were hidden explosives. Seamus's plan was to report Gilbert's disappearance to the investigation. Who knows, someone else might come to investigate Gilbert's disappearance one day. Dove and Emmy followed Gilbert's location to the festival area. They turned around and found the cave entrance covered with weeds. The islanders gathered to celebrate. Once the explosives exploded, the consequences would be unpredictable. Emmy begged Finton to stop the party immediately, but he was intoxicated with glory and praise. He thought Emmy was talking nonsense. Emmy rushed into the party and bumped into Teddy. She immediately had an idea. She asked him to sing a song at the bar. The islanders were drawn to the singing. They followed the parade float to change locations. At the same time, Dove found Seamus. He gripped the controller and looked at her warily, but Dove said they were a kind of people. They had lost loved ones. They were not victims. Because whether it was Fiona, Malachi, or Sean, Seamus had made his choices. The voices of the macaws echoed from three directions. Interpol rushed in at the same time. Seamus, caught in the crossfire, made a choice. He pressed the button. A mushroom cloud exploded. A myriad of things rolled down from the sky. Fortunately, the islanders had evacuated in time. No one was hurt. The macaws were destroyed by the international police. Seamus was taken away. The series of thrilling stories that revived Gilbert's podcast brightened his life again. Emmy got a job at the TV station where Dove worked. Dove got her mother's relic from the convent, a stuffed wolf. Her mother had said it would protect her. Is the wolf that appears again and again in Dove's life the reincarnation of her mother, showing her the way? Of course, clarifying the disappearance 25 years ago is important, but what is more valuable is that while delving into other people's stories, each person also continuously exposes the secrets in their hearts. They all have more or less unspeakable things and painful memories that they do not want to mention. Not every question has a corresponding answer, but every path comes from one's own choice. Instead of regretting the past, it is better to face one's inner self. Life still has its own ending. Thank you for following. Goodbye, and see you again.